Good morning, everyone. This is Teresa Lamb with Micro Accounting. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our Sage Intacct 2024 year-end close webinar. We've got some exciting topics for you, 1099s and year-end processing, everyone's favorite stuff. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We do have all the lines muted because we have a lot of people on this webinar today. So feel free to use the question or the chat pane. Actually, prefer the question, but you can put in both, either one. If you have any questions or anything during the webinar, we do have a lot to cover, so we'll try to get to those if we have some time throughout. If not, we will certainly record all of those and take those offline. And get back with you if you have any specific questions. So feel free to put those in if you have any questions, and we'll try to get to those, or like I said, follow up with you later. We are recording this webinar, so you should get the link to the recording afterwards, but we'll also have it posted on our website. So if anyone is unable to attend in your organization, and would like to watch this, they can go out on our website and register for that and see the recording that will be posted following this webinar today. We are going to attempt to put in, I think, the handouts here. I'll try to get those in with the slide deck. If we can't get those attached to the webinar where you can download those, we will send those out to all of the registration list following this as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Caitlin to get started. Caitlin, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I am one of our consultants here at Micro Accounting, and we are going, as Teresa alluded to, get started with our year-end webinar. And the biggest piece of this is, of course, 1099s. We have a lot of things to get into today. We're going to try to be respectful of your time and get you out of here in 30-ish minutes. So we're going to go through some housekeeping items for your system as you get ready for year-end and 1099 season, and then go through the 1099 process in Intacct as we go through. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I am going to be jumping between a slide deck and some demonstration within a demo environment, so you'll see me jumping back and forth as we go. So the first thing that we recommend that you do at least once a year is check your users and their permissions. Another great time to do this is during those quarterly updates with Intacct. Every quarter they do an update. Those often do require some permission updates. So that's a good time to look at it. But if you have not yet, please go into your system, make sure that all of your users are still active users, that everybody still is working for your company, and that they have all the permissions that they should have. Not enough and not too much, and too much are both not good things. So let's take a look at those at least once a year. A reminder that you do have to be a business user and a system administrator to do this. So if you do not see these options over here on your screen, that means that you do not have permissions. So please pass this on to your system administrator to make sure that they're doing this coming up on your end. The next thing that we recommend that you do is make sure that your subledgers are tying out to your general ledger. Whenever you're doing this, whenever you're pulling your subledger reports like your AP ledger, your AR ledger, please make sure that you're using your GL post date. If you're looking at like your vendor aging reports, things like that, I'm going to show you some screenshots here in a minute of what that looks like. So we want to make sure that our numbers are tying out together. These screenshots are from our demo company. And I want to point out here that you'll notice that these are batch summaries that are getting posted directly by the subledger into the general ledger. These are not manual postings into that ledger. And then here, if you're looking at your vendor aging report, again, you want to make sure that you are choosing that GL posting date that will affect your the report that's being generated out of Intacct right there. And as you're going through this and you're tying these out, if you do have some differences between the two, the first thing we want you to make sure that you do is that make sure you're running it again for the GL posting date and for the same period, since you can change the time frames that you're running those reports for. If you've done both of those things and you verify that you are in fact running them for the same date and for the GL posting date, but there's still something out of balance, you want to run your reports for the prior periods to determine when they came out of balance. Once you determine that, you can then go into your general ledger detail and look for transactions that were directly posted to the GL that didn't originate from the subledgers, so without those batch summary descriptions there. One thing that we do recommend that you do once you find those imbalances and hopefully are able to fix them is consider that you disallow direct posting into that GL account so that you cannot, your users cannot directly post into there. Sometimes your business does require that happens. So it's very, very specific instances. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. The next kind of housekeeping item that we recommend that you do is close your books if you're not doing them already. So at least once a year, please close your books if you're not already doing so quarterly or monthly. A reminder that in Intacct, you can close subledgers separately from your general ledger. Whenever you do close GL, it does close all of those subledgers for you. Whenever you go to close your books, you will notice that you have an option. If you leave this blank, it will close. If you're in a multi-entity environment, it will close all of your companies at once, or you can close for one entity, all entities, or even a group of entities like a region. So very quickly, I'm going to hop into our demo environment here and show you how to close out the books. The first thing I want to show you in our environment is the subledger closing. So if I wanted to close AP or AR or cash management, you can see here that I have this I am closed through January of 2024. I'm not going to close this yet. What I'm going to do is go close my general ledger. So I'm going to close all of GL. And like I mentioned before, this is going to close all of those subledgers for me. I am closing out 2024. I'm actually in December right now. So maybe I just want to close through November of 2024. So I'm going to select that period. I'm going to leave this blank so that it closes for everybody and simply select close books. And then it'll tell me that I've closed through November. What I want to show you is that it does in fact go close that AP subledger for me. So if I take a look at the AP subledger now, it says that I'm closed through November. So that is all I have there for that. So let me hop back into my slideshow very quickly. One thing that happened last year, if you are one of the unlucky ones, is that the IRS moved to e-filing. So if you are a business that has 10 or more returns collectively, you had to file with the IRS electronically. This is still true this year, and it was a big jump from 250 paper copies down to 10. We do have a partner with Sage Intacct that does do e-filing for us and does some other things. A lot of our clients used them last year and we're very, very happy. So we do recommend them moving forward, and we'll go through that a little bit more. But just wanted to point out again that you do still need to e-file with the IRS. And this does affect the functionality because Intacct does not produce a report that is in the format that you can e-file with the IRS. So you will need some third party to convert that file. And we do recommend using Tax Bandits, as you will see later. If you're one of the lucky ones that does not have to e-file, we do support printing 1099s and all of the forms out of Sage Intacct. Here's a list of those forms that are compatible with Intacct. In the home screen, you are able to click a link that will bring you to where you can order those forms that are 100% compatible. We do recommend go ahead and getting those forms ordered if you do need them now, because nobody wants to be scrambling on January 28th when everybody else is at the Office Depot trying to get them. So you can order these and you know that they will be compatible with Intacct. So the next thing, this is a very, very wordy slide, but it's just a reminder of where things are. If you're in a single company environment, then under the company setup page, you will that is where you will find your tax ID if for whatever reason you need to change that. This is something that is set up for you guys whenever you do go live with Intacct, but it's never a bad idea to go back and double check that everything is in there and is correct. If you are a multi-entity environment that does need to issue separate 1099s per entity, that federal ID field will be under the entity setup under your company setup screen. So just go take a look at those and make sure that everything is good and that the correct numbers are there. There are no typos, that sort of thing. Another housekeeping item is 1099 setup for vendors. So whenever you have a vendor, all of their 1099 information is housed under the additional information tab. This is where you will plug in their tax ID. If they have a 1099 name, aka just a name that needs to print on the 1099, but not necessarily on their checks. And this is also where you will mark them as 1099 eligible. Whenever you select the 1099 eligible box, when you hit save on that vendor, another pop-up box will pop up, and that is where you will select the default form and the default box on that form. The entity drop down that you see there on this screen is only necessary for beginning balances. Whenever you went live mid-year, this is something that we will do for you whenever you go live in Intacct. You can also use this for manual adjustments. So if you're simply adding a new vendor and making them 1099 eligible, you may just need to ignore that entity drop-down box. Another thing I wanted to point out here is the print as name and the names that are going to be printed on these 1099 forms, whether it's from you or from a third party. So on your vendor detail, on their just main tab, there is something called the print as name, and that is the name that is printing on your checks. That will be the name that prints on the 1099 form, unless you go into that additional information tab and put a 1099 name. Now, if the print as name and the 1099 name are the same, only one name will appear, the 1099 name, on that form. If that 1099 name is left blank, that print as name will appear on the 1099 form. Now, if your 1099 name is different, then both of those names will appear on your forms, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. And I know I just talked about a lot about names and addresses and all that stuff, and here we are again. Some people not only have a different print as or have a different name on the 1099s, they also have a separate address. So the address that will print on your 1099 form is the address off of the main vendor tab. However, you do have the ability to print a different address by going to the contact list and adding a 1099 contact with a different mailing address. And I will show you what that looks like in our environment here in a minute. As I am talking about this, we want to make sure that we point out that micro accounting is indeed one of those complicated vendors where our 1099 name is different and our payment address is different. So everything I'm about to show you in the environment will be something that you need to make sure is correct in your environment if you are sending us a 1099 this year. So this is our 1099 name here, and this is the address to send our 1099s to. Before I hop into that environment and show you what I'm talking about with the names and addresses, I did want to point out one thing. This does not apply to everyone, but if you are utilizing vendor types and those vendor types are associated with a default 1099 box, you cannot override this by going into the vendor while that vendor has a type. So any changes that you make to that vendor will not reflect on the 1099. This is something that we discovered a few years ago. If that change needs to be made and you are utilizing those vendor types with the default boxes, please reach out to us and we can help you moving forward and getting that set up and making sure that everything is configured correctly. So I'm just going to hop into our vendor here to show you about these addresses and print as names and such. So I'm going to show you our micro accounting vendor. That way we can take a look here. So I'm just going to view this vendor. This is the main vendor tab I was referring to. You can see down here that we have our PO box where we like our checks to be sent to, as well as our print as name, because this is who we want our checks to be made out to. On our additional information tab, again, this is where all the 1099 information is showing. We have our tax ID. This is not our correct tax ID, so please reach out to, I think it was accounts receivable at microaccounting.com if you need our W-9 with our tax ID on it. But a tax ID, and there is our 1099 name. So this is the separate name that we need printed on our 1099, as well as all of our form and box information up here. On the contact list, this is where we get to add that separate mailing address. You can see here that I have a separate 1099 contact right here. If I open up this contact, you'll see that I have a company name of Micro Accounting, and then I have a suggested contact name. Your contact name does have to be separate from your, I guess, default. It does have to be unique. So I suggest whenever you're adding one of these to add like 1099 to the end of it. And then your print as is, you know, what we would want on our check. Now, whenever I go to my mailing information, you can see our Highlander Way address here. And this is going to be the address that is going to print on our 1099 form. In order to get this added, all you need to do is edit the vendor, put in whatever category. So if I'm going to put a test, and then you just select add a new contact. This is where I would fill out the, you know, test 1099 name. And then my print as can be Micro Accounting. And then my mailing information, I would put in my address here. And then I would hit save. And that would be my contact. It is now added. And then from this contact here, I could select that one if I needed to add it there. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel those changes because I don't want that to stick. So that is just how you can add, you know, different names, different mailing addresses for that 1099 kind of vendor housekeeping situation that we have going on. So now we're moving into the good stuff. We're beyond housekeeping for our systems and our vendors, and it's time to review our 1099 information. You can do this at any point. You do not have to wait until year end. This is something that you can get off of this call and start today. So what you're going to do is you're going to first run the 1099 report under the accounts payable reports. This report allows you to see reportable and non-reportable data if you would like. And it also allows you to see if vendors are missing their tax IDs. This is something that you probably want to get a head start on, because if you're one of the unlucky ones that has the pleasure of working with vendors and trying to get their tax IDs from them and their W-9s, we know that it can take quite some time. So now is a good time to start. I'm going to show you all a demo of all of this. I just wanted to put some screenshots in our presentation here so you would know where to go pull all of these items. But in order to print 1099s, you just simply go to print 1099 form. And of course, if you need to print the 1096 to send to the IRS, you can print that form there as well. And if you are not going to utilize our partner in Tax Bandits and you need to use another third party, you can export a 1099 file in order to do so. Again, we just want to point out this is not a format that you can directly upload with the IRS for e-filing, so you will need to use a third party. Again, just a little bit more words for your information situation. Here are the different file types that you can export that data for a third party. If you are required to e-file with the IRS, again, you cannot get this file out of Intacct. You do have to use a third party. And speaking of third parties, Tax Bandits is who Sage has partnered with for e-filing with 1099s. A few steps need to be taken in order to utilize Tax Bandits on the configuration side of Intacct. So you need to have cloud services enabled, and you need to enable e-filing with Tax Bandits in your AP configuration. Please reach out to us if you need help getting those things set up. The last thing that you need to do is create a Tax Bandits account. When all of this is done, you will see another menu option appear under the AP menu that says like 1099 e-file submissions, and that will be what you use. And what is going to happen is that Tax Bandits is going to securely transfer your data directly from Intacct into Tax Bandits. And what's really nice about this is it requires no exporting, importing, any of that kind of stuff. There's no room for error on the transfer of data that's happening between the two. You simply click submit, and then it gets moved over to Tax Bandits. They are going to generate an e-file with the IRS. What is also nice is that you do not need your own IRS filing number. Tax Bandits handles that for you. They can even distribute your copies to your recipients either by mail or electronically. And because they did partner with Sage, there is special pricing. So please reach out to Teresa if you want. We want to make sure that you get that special pricing. There is something in the Help Center. If you search in the Help Center e-file 1099 Tax Bandits, as you see here, you can get some more information on Tax Bandits and what that looks like as well. I also put that link in there, so if you get that handout, you can go directly to that. And here's just a little bit about what Tax Bandits does. So what's going to happen on the Intacct side before you get to Tax Bandits is you're going to do all of your maintenance. You're going to make sure everything is in there. You're going to review those 1099 reports, and then you're going to create that batch. It's then going to go over to Tax Bandits, where they will then they're going to do some validation, which helps with not having to do any corrections, which nobody loves. If you know, you know. So they help you with validating that 1099 information, and then they're going to directly transmit that to the IRS, even to the states if they require it. And again, you can choose for them to distribute recipient copies. They do give you the ability to pull up your forms for 7 years after, so you always have access to them. And they also do have a portal where people, your vendors, can go in and pull their 1099s as well. And here are just some really basic screenshots of what that looks like. Unfortunately, we do not have access to demo exactly what that looks like, but here's that e-file submission screen where you just select e-file and then it transmits over to Tax Bandits, and here's like a little screenshot of what their screen looks like. And again, you do have access to those forms yourself with Tax Bandits for 7 years. They're going to give you some status updates on the filing status with them, and they do have that automated validation. So now I'm going to hop into a demo, unfortunately not of Tax Bandits, but we're going to run through pulling those 1099 reports and then printing 1099s as well. So over in AP, you go to 1099s and 1099 report. Here on this screen, you have lots of options. I'm going to run this report for 2024. You can select specific vendors or employees if you would like. You can run this report for all of your entities by leaving this blank, or specific entities if you want to run them one by one. And then you can select your form types. I'm just going to run this for miscellaneous and NEC, but there are more form options on here if you need to do those. As far as your transaction information, you can choose to only do 1099 transactions, or show all of your transactions, or even just non-1099 transactions if you want to make sure that maybe you haven't missed any for those vendors that are a little bit of both. And then you can choose to only show your minimum eligible amounts. I'm going to go ahead and run this for everything. And then I want to see the details, and I'll show you why I want to see the details here in a minute. So I'm just going to click view. And whenever this pops up, you can see that I have an entity column. So this is telling me which transactions belong to which entity. So for example, this vendor is going to get several 1099s from me because I do file those separately. If I needed to know what something was, if I was like, oh, furniture and fixtures, and I want to click into that transaction, I can drill down to that bill to verify that it is 1099able. And then also on this report, you can see that I can easily view who does not have a tax ID. So RWS does not have their tax ID. I need to go find their W-9 or request one for them. If I scroll down here to micro accounting, you can see that I also have the ability to see that 1099 name as well as that print as name, because both of those names will be printed on that tax form. So once I've done my due diligence and I think everything is correct here, I see everything I need to see. You can see that I have my form type in my box that I need as well. I'm going to go ahead and go print my 1099. So you just go to print 1099 form. And here is where you'll have to select your year. And you do have to print by entity. So you do have to go, or by entity group, which I'll talk about a little bit in a minute. So I'm just going to print this for one entity. And then you have to select your form type. I do want to point out that you're printing offset. So if your numbers are not printing in those boxes, which we've all fought with, those offsets, you can adjust them horizontally and vertically by here, and that these will change based on the form type that you have. So just be aware of that. If you do need to do a correction, then you would select this corrected box right here later on in the process. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit print because this is the first time I'm doing it. And what we can see here, even though it's super small, is that this is what it looks like, because I don't have those pretty red boxes. I didn't forget to mention that with Tax Bandits, you are able to just, if you want to mail out forms yourself, you are able to print those forms on regular paper without all of the red background and like all that stuff. So you don't have to fight with the printer as much. So again, another reason to go with that offer from them. But in this case, I'm printing them from Intacct, so I do need to make sure my things are lining up in the boxes. And you can see I have my company information, my company's tax ID, my vendor's tax ID, as well as their mailing information. If I go down here to micro accountings, you'll see that I have both of those names on the form, as I mentioned would happen. And there is that updated address that I need for my 1099. But I have not printed yet. It has not come out of my printer. In order to print it, I do need to hit that print button right there. And this is where you'll select your printer. And a lot of the printing woes will happen. We'll go over some troubleshooting options for printing your 1099s here and kind of the common mistakes that we see. If you do actually have a printer, you'll see some other options here, and you would just hit print. And then printing a 1096 is pretty much the same thing. You just go to print 1096 right here, and then select your year and your entity, your form, you'll put in your contact details and then select print. Again, you have those offset options there if things are not lining up in those red boxes. All right. Now I'm going to go back to my presentation. So what I didn't talk about is whenever you're doing your 1099 report review, and then you notice that there is an overwhelming amount of changes that need to occur. Do not fret. We do have some ways that we can do this that don't require a whole lot of manual going into the system and doing things manually. We can utilize some imports to update large amounts of data all at once, like tax IDs or balances, that sort of thing. So if you need to update your vendors with their 1099 information, we can do that with a vendor update import. We can also put in initial balances or update, make some manual updates to 1099 balances if we need to, utilizing the opening balances. Initial balances are typically done whenever you go live with Intacct. So just reach out to us if you are not seeing something that you expect to see or that you do need a lot of manipulation to those balances. Another thing that we often see is you're reviewing and you find out that all year you were paying a vendor that was 1099able, but those transactions were not marked as 1099. We can update those with an import rather than individually going into each transaction and checking that little checkbox on the bill. We can do this retroactively based on the date range. So again, if you need help with this, please let us know and we can point you in the right direction. Some tips, utilize those vendor setups and those beginning balances to make adjustments. So, you know, like I mentioned, if you went live mid-year, we do have to put in those beginning balances, but maybe you have another system that you need to update a balance for, whether it's negative or positive. We can utilize those beginning balances to make adjustments. Another thing I want to point out is that if you are utilizing parent and child vendors, Intacct does not roll up the balances for the children vendors into that parent. So what we can do is we can use those adjustments, those beginning balance adjustments, to roll up those child amounts into that parent vendor manually. That way that vendor will get the balance of both. Another thing is that sometimes you have multiple entities that have the same tax ID, but you have them set up separately in Intacct for whatever reason. Maybe you just need to get separate financials, but whenever it comes to tax season, you need to report them together with their vendor balances together. What you can do is you can create a location group and then run those 1099s by that group. So if I had two separate entities, I could do it for however many I would like. I can put them into a group and then run those 1099s, and that will put the tax ID and put those balances of those two entities together. Now for your printer settings, we've all fought with the printer. It's a complete nightmare whenever you're trying to get things to line up into those boxes. Even more of a reason to utilize the tax bandits, let them do their e-filing. And then if you do need to physically print those yourselves, you want to print them and mail them out, you can't. You just do regular paper and the boxes are there and everything works. However, if you're not going to do that, whenever you are at that printing screen, if your adjustments are not working and it's just not lining up and it's off a little bit, make sure that your page scaling is set to none, or actual size is what it's sometimes called. Your auto rotate should not be checked, and set it to auto portrait or landscape on your paper setting. So this will save you from a ton of woes as far as fighting with those lining up. There's also a great section in the help section about troubleshooting the printing from in Sage Intacct's help section, So I highly recommend checking that out. And speaking of the help section, here are some links to 1099. The Help Center is really, really great whenever it comes to 1099 season. This is something that we do once a year. Sometimes we just need a reminder. And I put a couple screenshots of things that you can type into the Help Center and have those things pop up for you. There's a 1099 guide, troubleshooting, the printing, how to tie out that 1099 report, all of those types of things. You can find all of those in the help section. So just a reminder of how to get there in Sage Intacct. If you hit help and support and you just hit help center, this is something where I could, type in 1099 tax bandits, and then that article will pop up for, e-filing with tax bandits. And there's all the information and the steps that I would need to do and all that kind of stuff. So it's very, very easy, user-friendly, great, great articles and great even visuals on here whenever you're doing that. I'll hop over back to my thing here. All right, and then I can open this up for some questions, or if you do have any questions on, after this, please feel free to reach out to anybody on our team or to our Intacct support email or Teresa. And that is all I have.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. It doesn't look like we had a few questions that came in, but it looked like you answered them throughout the PowerPoint. So nothing that we needed to circle back on. You covered all of them that came in. I did put in the chat a link to the Tax Bandit Sage pricing, because they do offer discounted pricing for Sage Intacct customers. So you can see that ahead of time before you create that account and log in if you're interested in that. So that link to that pricing is in the chat there. I believe it's a 10% discount, if I'm correct. But you can find that link there. If you do have any questions, if you need any help getting everything set up and configured in your system to be able to use Tax Bandits, please let us know. We'll be happy to help log in and work on or help you get that configuration set up if you are using it new this year. As Caitlin mentioned, thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today. Reach out to us, anyone on our team, at intacctsupport@microaccounting.com if you have any questions or if there's anything at all that we can help you with. We hope that you all have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We probably will not have a webinar in January since that is so busy, but we'll get those started again, kicked off in February. So be looking for our newsletters to see our webinars that will be coming up next year. And as always, we do appreciate any feedback. So if you have any thoughts on something that you would like us to cover in a webinar next year, we are working currently on building out our schedule. We appreciate any ideas that you have. So let us know if there's something that you would like us to cover in a future webinar, and we will be happy to take that into consideration as we're building out our schedule for next year. So again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate all of you as our customers and look forward to a smooth year-end and 1099 processing. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.